this year that you seem to have adequate funding, right? Can you maybe comment on that too? I mean, I know that obviously I only started here like 6 or 7 months ago, but in past years, obviously, it's been more difficult. What's going through your mind now, knowing that the City Council stepped up and provided that extra funding? You know, what's going through your mind now going into this year compared to years past?
Yeah, so I think adequate was your word, not mine.
Right,
so
right.
I think that, I don't call it adequate yet.
How would you describe it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have funding that prevents us from having to make tough decisions about the resources in schools. So several years ago, we put counselors back in schools. We put nurses back in schools. We actually have instructional materials now. We have hydration stations in schools. And we're expanding art and music in schools. And so the funding now supports all of those things moving forward. We don't have to pull back on those things like we've had to do in the past. And so, but the distinction between that and adequate is like, what do we still need in order to have an adequate education that naturally is a lot more than what we have, right? So it is, we still have a need for more resources that deal with children who are exposed to trauma. We still have a need for more development of staff around the social and emotional aspects of learning. We still have a lot of work to do around math and science. And all of those things are related to materials and instructional practices. And so those are the types of things that we still have upgrades to facilities that need to be made. I talked about, we now have over 250 classes that we've modernized. That's new lighting, new floors, new furniture, new technologies, new windows, new ceilings. We've done 260 over the past 2 years. We have another 9,800 that need to be done, right? And and when you think about that, that's a $20 million price tag that we're doing every year. But it would take us years to do all 9,800. So we still have all of those things to be done. So that's where the adequacy point comes in. I mean, and that's what we have now is money that allows us to maintain the investments that we've put in schools and maintain those for an extended period of time, at least for the next 2 years.
And then again, to Irv's question too, so how would, can you maybe say that again, like how would you describe it? To me, it almost sounds like you're just keeping your head above water at this point, you know, like maintaining what you have instead of going up. You're not going down, clearly. You're not going up. It sounds like you're just maintaining.
Well, it is maintaining, but it's maintaining additional investments that we didn't have, right? So you said you've only been here a couple of months. So you weren't here when the schools didn't have counselors. You weren't here when they didn't have nurses or when we opened with only teachers and principals. And so we've had to now regroup to put all those things back. And we don't want to create a yo-yo effect where we're putting them back and then taking them out again. And so you have to maintain those resources and then move beyond that. And it's more than keeping our head above water, because the keeping our head above water was happening when we didn't have counselors in all schools and we were just trying to make sure children were safe. But it is making sure that the investments that we've made, we're able to hold on those investments and build from that point forward. And that's what we're trying to do now.
So it's no longer dire and desperate.
Yeah, it's no longer we need $50 million or we won't be able to open.
Right.
And it's no longer December 31st may be your last paycheck. And it's no longer, these are conversations we used to have. It's no longer, we're not sure we'll be able to meet payroll, right? So we've had 3 years now of a balanced budget. And it's one of the reasons we've gone to a 5-year financial plan versus an annual plan, because we wanted to give City Council and the state adequate time to address the issues before we have to go back to them to say, we need $50 million or we won't be able to meet our obligations. And so the investments that they provided for us for the next 5 years actually will take us 2 years before we're gonna need another influx of cash just to maintain those investments.
This is about the new teachers. 'Cause I think you guys are welcoming, what, about 500, 700 new teachers?
500.
Which kind of reverses the trend, because I think in the past, I've been here long enough, in the past, you guys had to cut or to lay off teachers. So this is like something new, and it's like a positive spin for the district. What is it going to take in the future for, let's say, 2019, we're going to welcome 1,000 teachers, 2020, 2,000 teachers, because I believe in the past we had cut like, what, 5,000 teachers?
We cut 5,000 positions,
Okay.
right? So in 13, we cut 5,000 positions. We now restored many of those positions that were school-based, right? So part of those are the counselors, nurses, teachers have been restored. But I think I like your question, because the first couple of years, we were bringing those positions back. Now we're dealing with attrition. And the nice thing about dealing with attrition is that in the past, we've had to rehire many of the teachers we laid off. But let's say last year, we had to bring in about 900 teachers. The year before, which was the year we started hiring, we had to bring in like 1,200 teachers. The attrition, the reason I like it is because this year, we only had to hire 550, which means we're also retaining individuals who are beginning with the district. And one of the things that I want to shift to is this whole notion of recruitment to retention. And the other part of this, and I think is really important to part of your question, is 39% of the 550 this year represented persons of color. 25% of them were black. And that's intentional as we work with HBCUs and other organizations to ensure that we're recruiting more individuals that represent the populations that we serve in our schools.
Are you getting more males also?
We are getting more males, and it's just males in general and more black males. And so we have, and the trick is actually keeping those individuals. You remember when Jerry and I were here, I think you two were here, and Ms. Vogel.
Because
Jerry Jordan and I were here, we were talking about
it's
how.
hard to keep them because they go elsewhere for what?
Well, actually, they, number one, you don't come into this profession to get rich, right? So you don't, that's number one. Number two, we're trying to create like the psychological value in individuals, males of color, being a part of our teaching force as mentors and guides and leaders for young persons of color, right? So and many individuals have left teaching, particularly a lot of the males and a lot of the blacks. Some left through the layoffs, right? So they were last in, so they were the first to go, based on the seniority system. But then others left because they didn't feel like they were supported. They felt like they were the person that everyone came to when there was a discipline issue or to break up a fight or to provide some cultural context to issues that children were having. And what we're trying to do is get much better as a system around everybody having the skills to do those things, so that our black male teachers are not just the coaches, but they're also the calculus teachers, they're the chemistry teachers, they're the English teachers, and not just the PE individuals or the individuals that we go to.
Physical education.
Yep, physical education, or not just the individuals we go to when someone needs to talk to the boys who are cutting up.